I call the Honourable John Banks.
Speaker, we've just heard from the Right Honourable member, who is the principal shepherd of the politics, Mr. Speaker. It's been practised by the Labor Party all week so well, and has got them nowhere. Dog whistle. Dog whistle.
Point of order, the Honourable Winston Peters.
Table the issue of the first emergency here. Mr. Thorne has just resigned.
Are you seeking leave to
table information about that?
Well, that's no. Well, I'll ask the member. We have a point of order. Look, that information's publicly available. It is publicly available. It's on the website. And order, and I'm calling order, please. Order. I'm calling the Honourable John Banks.
Well, about time too. And this is a rambling from the leader of New Zealand First. A rambling. And I can tell the Parliament today and the people of New Zealand today that the Prime Minister tried on numerous occasions to set up meaningful discussion with the Right Honourable Leader of the New Zealand First, Winston First Party, to discuss these matters, and the phone was always off the hook. The phone was off the hook.
Point of order. When I'm on my feet, members was the Honourable, Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Speaker, I take offence to a gross misrepresentation about the New Zealand First Party and its name, and the fact is, just because Santa Claus ran into heavy weather, it's no time to call Rudolph.
Look, the point that you make, order, I'm on my feet. The point that you made was a valid one. Members refer to their members and their parties by their correct name, but it doesn't help them to go on and throw something back. I'm calling the Right Honourable John Banks.
The Prime Minister tried on numerous occasions through his office to set up a meeting with the leader of New Zealand First, and the phone was always off the hook. But the question I ask my colleagues on this side of the House this afternoon, will the politics of the dog whistle being perpetrated this week by David Shearer work? Will they work for him? No, they won't work for him. And he was also invited by the Prime Minister in my presence in the Parliamentary Security and Intelligence Committee to have a chat with the Prime Minister about these things, but of course he didn't say that today. And he offered the Prime Minister not one constructive piece of advice to make this bill the Labor Party put in place in 2003 right. We're here because of shonky legislation perpetrated on the people of New Zealand by the Labor Party government in 2003. They could have had much more thoughtful legislation then that would work in the best interests of security and intelligence for this country, but no, they put together and shonked together a piece of bad legislation that we on this side of the House have had to fix up. But they didn't want to come across, and they bleat today that the Parliament on this side of the House has just one number. One individual to pass this legislation. We'd be waiting for them for years, because if it wasn't for the leadership of the Prime Minister to put this legislation right, we'd still be dealing with shonky Labor Party 2003 legislation that didn't work in the best interest of New Zealand, including the .com. It didn't work in the best interest of the .com. It didn't work in the best interest of the 88 warrants that the GCSB were exercising. It didn't work in the best interest of an open democratic society with a search and surveillance overview of the country to keep us safe. It didn't work because the legislation was blurred and bleary, and like the learned member, my aged friend over there, the Right Honourable member, like him, it was out of date. It was out of date. And I say to the Leader of New Zealand First, the legislation we're fixing today was like that member, well and truly out of date, used by date, expired before it was even put in place in this Parliament in 2003. The ACT Party and the people of Epsom back those who work to defend our country. The ACT Party and the people of Epsom back the men and women of the New Zealand Defence Forces and our small but vital intelligence and security communication. We don't put the boot into them. We don't blame them. We support them, we help them, and we this afternoon are supplying them a legislative framework to make all of their work most worthwhile inside the legality of search and surveillance needed by this country for the democratic purposes of keeping these shores safe from people that would otherwise want to harm us. The ACT Party and the people of Epsom back the men and women of the New Zealand Police, who keep us safe in our homes and our property and protect us. The ACT Party and the people of Epsom believe it is the primary duty of government to keep New Zealand safe, both from foreign and domestic threats to our lives and property. That is why any abridgment of our fundamental rights must be expressly authorised by clear law and only to the extent necessary to achieve the first duty of the government, Mr. Attorney, as he said so well, the protection of the rights and values of the people of this country and New Zealand. All regimes that authorise the government to engage in covert activities have three features, and these are the three features that are spelt out in this new legislation. First, they must have clear legal authority. Second, there must be strong executive branch oversight. And third, there must be parliamentary oversight, like the Intelligence and Security Commission, on which I serve, and on which the leader of the Labour Party serves, and which the leader of the Green Party serves, and made no substantive contribution to changes in the Shonky legislation that we've tried to fix here today. They made no contribution on that Parliamentary Select Committee whatsoever, except criticism. And what we tried to do is put right the legislation that they got wrong in the first place. Being fair to the Green Party in 2003 did not support this legislation. Labor failed to get the law right in the first place. The Kitteridge report found that the 2003 legislation was probably never fit for purpose. That's what Ms Kitteridge said. That's what Mr Naser said, Justice Naser. It's not fit for purpose and it needs to be reformed, and that's why we're doing today. And on the other side of the House, they're whinging and bleating because the people of New Zealand haven't given them the numbers to be on this side of the House. And they're still fighting the 2011 election. Further, the GCSB could intercept the communications of New Zealanders on behalf of public entities so long as those entities had legal authority to do this. Yet Labour's legislation said, in contradiction to these express provisions, that the GCSB cannot intercept the communication of New Zealanders. What a total mess this legislation became. What a total mess the execution of this legislation became. Labor cannot tell the country that it did not know the GCSB was doing this work on behalf of other public entities. While it's fair enough for Labor to ask for an inquiry, Labor should have recognised the immediate need to fix up this legislation that was probably never fit for purpose in the first place. So notwithstanding their pleas for an inquiry, which was the only proposition they put to the Security and Intelligence Committee, they didn't want to help this Parliament fix up that shonky piece of 2003 rush-through legislation. ACT agrees with the Cabinet Secretary, who is a fine public servant, that the 2003 Act needs immediate fix. That's what the fine public servant, Rebecca Kitteridge, said. It needs an immediate fix. The Prime Minister said to the Labour Party. The Prime Minister said to the leader of the Labour Party in my presence. The Prime Minister said to the Green Party, and the Prime Minister said to the apparatchiks in New Zealand First, come and have a cup of tea and we'll try and meet at the crossroads. And we'll try and meet at the crossroads. The Prime Minister's good at having cups of tea, would he? He would have willingly had you into his office and given you some tea to meet at the crossroads so we could fix up a piece of legislation that you, Mr Peters, voted for in the first place. Mr Speaker, the ACT Party is pleased to support the beefing up of the Office of the Inspector General. The ACT Party suggested there be better links between the Inspector General and the Intelligence and Security Committee, and there are matters not fixed by this bill that require more work. One such issue is the definition of private communications. There's a lot of work to be done. Isn't it a pity that this Parliament couldn't have agreed on this piece of substantive legislation to fix up the shonky piece of work that was once over lightly done by a previous government led by Helen Clark in 2003? The bill is crystal clear on what the GCSB can do, and the bill is crystal clear on what the GCSB can't do. And the final point I make, of course, there is a risk to freedom from the covert capabilities of any government. This is stating the obvious, but this bill seeks to manage the risk by improving oversight. That's why I support it.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
Speaker, there's a deep irony today in the fact that this government will